Okay. Thank you, Jason, and good afternoon. Actually, good evening and good morning, everyone. First, I would like to thank the Development Center of the OECD and to my dear friend Mari Pezzini for supporting our initiative to make this event. Even more now that has been 1 year since Colombia's accession to the OECD, so we are celebrating today. I would like also to welcome and thank all participants for joining this roundtable addressing Colombia's experience of integrating Venezuelan migrants. Moreover, I would like to thank the Director of Migration from the Colombian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Francisco Espinosa, for taking the time to participate in the roundtable series on forced displacement. I have to mention all of you that our Vice Minister Mejia couldn't join us today since she was called into another matter. She extends her regards and sends her apologies to all the participants for not being able to be here with us. The motivation to engage in this conversation for Colombia is particularly important, and we consider migration as a social phenomenon, and we consider that it must be addressed in all its dimensions. And actually, I would like to recall that Colombia, represented by our Vice Minister Mejia, recently participated in the IVA OECD Development Center Roundtable on ensuring coherence across donors and host country measures in addressing forced displacement. It was on April 12th. And also last week, Colombia participated in the event organized by Friends of Gender Equality Plus to discuss impacts and implications on migration women in times of COVID. The discussion highlighted important considerations regarding investment and legal framework needed for integration, as well as considerations on social norms and intersectoriality. At the same time, Colombia's active role as a steering committee member for the 2020 Policy Dialogue on Migration and Development and upcoming 2021 program on dialogue on migration and development. But let me please stress that the Venezuelan migratory crisis, the second largest in the world, has posed challenges for host countries throughout the Latin American region. And we will see also for Asia, Europe, and many other countries around the world. Several countries have found themselves in a situation demanding unprecedented approach to policies, institutions, and infrastructure. Approximately 5 million Venezuelans have fled their country since 2014, and most of these migrants have remained in the Latin American and the Caribbean region. And according to the United Nations, Colombia is now amongst the 5 countries that host the largest numbers of refugees worldwide. The change in Colombia has been quick as a hosting country. The total numbers of migrants living in Colombia has jumped from 159,000 in 2015 to 1.9 million people in 2020. It is, and I have to say that 93% of this figure came from Venezuela. As a result, the share of migrants in Colombia's total population rose from 0.3% in 2015 to 3.7% in 2020. And Colombia, as the main hosting country for the Venezuelan migration, has committed to guarantee the provision of public services for the more than 1.7 million Venezuelan migrants in our territory. This unprecedented size of migration has put the Colombian economy at stake. In response, despite the complexities that the COVID crisis has brought into light, our policy is making the greatest efforts to facilitate Venezuelan migrants access to health, education, and employment. That is why in March 2021, Colombia launched the Temporary Statute for the Protection of Venezuelan Migrants, providing temporary protection status. This comprehensive socioeconomic integration And we aspire is not only a matter of human rights protection, it's also an opportunity to structure the resilient recovery we need. And to achieve this, the Colombian government has recognized the need to build appropriate public policies in acknowledgement of the vulnerable situation in which migrants are immersed. Accordingly, it supports their effective integration into labor market and the health system through the characterization of their capabilities, needs, and objectives. But I will let Francisco Espinosa, he will later, he will explain this with more detail. So Colombia is really happy to be co-hosting this event with the OECD here with Mario, and we consider this is an opportunity to discuss the Colombian experience of migration management, but also it's an opportunity to share information on Colombian recent policy initiatives, including our main challenges. And also it's an opportunity to exchange, to learn, to promote greater coordination with other countries. So we are confident that experiences and ideas will emerge in this space and that the conversation will provide us with an overview of the best policies for achieving a migrant inclusive recovery and perhaps, hopefully, a new narrative around this topic. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Mario Pezzini. Thank you.
Dear Gloria, thank you. Let me add to you in welcome and thank all the participants for joining this roundtable, which is addressing Colombia and other experiences in integrating for Colombia, Venezuelan migrants for other countries of origin. And let me thank Colombia for hosting it and having had the idea to organize this seminar. I want to recall first is my institutional obligation. The DEF has a long history of working on migration and development as another important part of the organization, which is represented here, which is our Directorates of Employment, Labor, and Social Affairs, and we have here Jean-Christophe Dumont. So let me summarize from our side the work that concerned this discussion. We have done research and dialogue on immigration, remittances, diaspora engagement, return, circular migration, exactly for our focus on developing country. It has also meant assessing migration to low and middle income countries. In fact, in tackling the policy challenges of migration in 2011, I had just joined the center at that time, we asked, what does integration mean in the context of a developing country? And then we continue this discussion up to the point in which, in the perspective on global development in 2017, we ask, what is the future of South-South migration? Guess exactly the subject that we are addressing today. Again, the same here, we address how public policy create enabling environment of immigrants in developing countries. And in the ECLM in 2018, how immigrants contribute to the economy of developing countries. In other terms, the country of origin and the country of destination when their migration is South-South, which is, again, very crucial in the issue we are discussing here. We analyzed forced displacement in 2020. How are donor instruments addressing the challenges and the needs of forcibly displaced persons in developing countries? I want to highlight that since DEF began working on the issue of migration between developing countries, the challenges and rates have only increased. It's not our fault. It happened that during this period of research, that's what we saw. And why it increased? You know better than I do, there are technological reasons, information, transport, anticipated socialization, therefore, of people, different economic growth rates within regions that make the people move from one place to the other, demographic trends, and we know how crucial they are, for example, in Africa in these days, growing, in other regions declining, policy reasons, conflicts, climate change. For all these reasons, the phenomenon has increased. Indeed, forced displacement is a major development issue. The rate of forced displacement are remaining within regions. In South America is 75% that is concerned by this phenomenon. In Africa is 87%. In Western Asia is 78%. South and Southeastern Asia is 79%. So overall, practically all of forced displacement persons originate from low and middle income countries, while 85% of forced displaced persons are in low and middle income countries. So I want to congratulate Colombia on adopting the new regulation we have just heard from Gloria, and also the protection instruments for migrants. But obviously, there are a series of questions that remain open, and that's why it's so important to discuss. How can migrant integration be measured? How can measures towards integration be evaluated? What migration and integration challenges are specific to developing country context? Sometimes we easily conclude that one measure may be applied everywhere. Is it the case? And what lessons from OECD countries are really adaptable? Which ones are not adaptable? Again, it's not because we do something in one country that it can be transferred as such. And we know this is a long-lasting lessons that we have derived in these years. How do migrants contribute to hosting societies? How can policy better leverage such contribution? How can humanitarian and development-oriented actors work together on addressing the integration of migrants? And last but not least, what lesson can be learned from different experiences in different countries? That's why we are here. I want to highlight the recent work and future work that helps answer some of these questions is in our closet. There are policy papers towards more sustainable solution to forced displacement. What measure are donor countries applying to forced displacement in developing countries? There are upcoming papers on instruments by hosting countries on addressing forced displacement. A recent roundtable on coherence and implementation of forced displacement instrument with EBA Sweden. An upcoming governmental roundtable with donors on creating coherent policy instruments to address forced displacement. A new project with EBA Sweden and DCD on social protection coverage of forcibly displaced persons. I want to underline with all these lists, but obviously we can find a way to disseminate this information to you in a written way. I want to underline the commitment of the OECD to further collaborate with Colombia on migration-related issues. And I want to thank, obviously, the presence here of Turkey and sharing with us another very important contribution of IGAD and obviously of our colleague from the OECD. So let me highlight the DEV host opportunities to dialogue, such as this one, is the lead up to its annual policy dialogue on migration and development, the PDMD. I hate acronym, but you know what I'm talking about. So in that spirit, we are fortunate to have with us today all these participants, Turkey, the Minister of Interior, the Ambassador, IGA, the Horn of Africa. And in this respect, I want to shut up now and to give the floor to those that can really contribute. And let me start with giving the floor to ELS, Head of Division, Jean-Christophe Dumont, to contribute to our discussion. The floor is yours, Jean-Christophe.
Thank you very much, Mario. And let me start by thanking Colombia and the Development Center for inviting ELS to join in co-organizing this event. This is much appreciated. Thank you very much. Excellencies, Francisco, Espinosa, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome you on the behalf of the OECD Directorate for Employment, Labor and Social Affairs. And I shall apologize for Stefano Scarpetta, the director, who would have loved to be here today, but has been caught in a meeting, an endless meeting on discussion on the labor ministerial that the ELS will organize next year. Colombia's recent immigration from Venezuela is unprecedented, not only for the country and the region, but also on a global scale. Only the Syrian crisis has been of similar magnitude, and notably to Turkey. So it's so important, as Mario said, to have the perspective from Turkey in this discussion today. A trademark of Colombia's reaction has been the focus on integration, acknowledging that migrants are in Colombia to stay, most likely. Not many countries have realized this fact so quickly and so clearly. This acknowledgement is also a central element in the motivation behind Colombia's large-scale regularization program. And as our Secretary General Galgoya mentioned in his statements regarding this regularization program on February 10th, he said, with a clear path for the Venezuelan migrants to stay in Colombia in a regular way, the issue of integration will gain further importance. And the OECD stands ready to support Colombia in this respect, both the Development Center and ELS for sure. Let me stress in the few minutes I have in front of me some of the lessons that we think matter from Colombia and can be transferred to the Colombian context based on the ELS work on integration. The first, and I'm sure that the Turkish colleagues will agree, is that early intervention matters. The first months and years after migration are a strong indication of long-term outcomes, especially in a situation with high inflows of vulnerable migrants, forcibly displaced people, such as in the case of Colombia and Turkey. This requires a swift reaction on many policy fronts in parallel, and this is the challenge. Health, education, housing, labor market, you need to address them all at the same time. This is a complex undertaking, and many of the disadvantages faced by immigrants also apply, especially because many of the disadvantages faced by immigrants also apply to the native born. The overwhelming majority of immigrants are keen to integrate quickly after arrival. If their skills are left idle for a long period, it is difficult to reactivate them. In this respect, Colombia's quick focus on integration helps with respect to integration, not only in the short term, but also in the long term. The second lesson is that integration is both a role of government and a role of society issue. Many different ministries and agencies across all levels of government are involved, and their action need to be well coordinated. At the same time, especially in the case of large-scale inflow, it is evident that government action alone cannot be sufficient. The civil society needs to be part of a solution for both labor market and social integration. Especially employers have a crucial role to play. And our joint OECD UNHCR action plan for the engagement of employers in the hiring of refugees provide a lot of good practices, example, and concrete policy suggestions that I would be very happy to share with you if of interest. The third lesson is that immigrant skills and qualification are not well valued in our labor markets, OECD-wide. In Colombia, in spite of a higher formal education level on average, the average hourly earning of immigrants are about 40% below those of Colombians. Again, in reaction to the recent inflows from Syria, and maybe it would be interesting to hear the experience of Turkey in this regard as well, OECD countries have developed a lot of innovative tools to assess and value the skills of refugees, from which Colombia could benefit. The fourth element is that reducing labor market informality and migrant integration goes hand in hand. Migrants are more likely to work informally, and this enhances their vulnerability. At the same time, the objectivity of reducing the high level market informality in Colombia cannot be obtained without better integration of migrants who are there. The ongoing regularization process should help. However, as the experience of OECD countries has shown, regularization alone do not suffice to address the structural issue that push immigrants into the informal part of the labor market. The next point is about discrimination. And it's a fact that needs to be addressed everywhere. Discrimination has been observed in all countries where it has been studied, and it has often underappreciated issue. In the Colombian context, it's obviously less prominent. The issue was not seen initially as a major one, but because Venezuelans are from neighboring country and they share the same language and culture. However, it's clear that the COVID pandemic has fueled in Colombia as well subtle mechanism of discrimination. Addressing the discrimination issue starts by putting facts on the table, explaining, as Mario said, how much immigrants can contribute to the economy and to economic growth in particular. It is also a means to focus on a narrative that it's also needed to focus on a narrative that focuses on what migrants and native born have in common, rather than stressing the difference, thereby avoiding the impression that this is us versus them. The fifth point, and is closely related, and I would like to mention that it's important for policymakers to be aware of a public opinion, but avoid being ruled by it. The recent regularization program in Colombia is a good example of such a leadership. Of course, there are legitimate questions about the impact of migration on the host country society, and fact-based public discourse is essential, as well as information and data. Finally, good integration is an investment into the future and should be recognized as such. Countries that neglect the integration issue for new arrivals in the past now pay the heavy price in terms of poor integration outcomes of the children of these migrants. Breaking intergenerational disadvantage starts by providing equal opportunities to children. It also requires to mark targeted effort for a better inclusion of migrant women, whose own integration success is a strong predictor of the outcomes of children, as our own work and the discussion we had at Friend of Gender last week has shown. Viewing integration as an investment does not necessarily mean that all integration measures are costly. However, some undoubtedly are, and it is in the interest of the international community to support Colombia in this context. Let me close, Mr. Espinosa and dear colleagues, by saying that the OECD, ELS, and the Development Center, as Mario just said, stand ready in supporting Colombia in responding to the challenges of the Venezuelan crisis. In this respect, we would welcome Colombia's participation in the OECD Working Party on Migration and the OECD Expert Group on Migration, where we had the pleasure of participation of Migration Colombia in the past. I look forward to this further exchange with you and your colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jean-Christophe. Very helpful. The precise point, I think everything you said, skills, not measuring the value of migrants, the relationship with informality are particularly helpful, but also the fact that it is a societal phenomena. You're totally right. And I think we will have to distinguish countries that when you arrive there offer you bread and salt from countries that don't. And that's a crucial element. Okay, now let me give the floor to Juan Francisco Espinosa Palacios. Bienvenido. Entonces vamos a escuchar, we are going to listen directly the experience and what is going to be done and has been done in Colombia. Thank you. We are eager to listen to you, Juan Francisco.
Thank you very much, Mario, Jean-Christophe, Gloria, everybody. It's a huge pleasure for me, an honor to have the opportunity to be in this space, virtual space. I have to be very, very honest. I prefer to be in Paris, but my office is okay because at the end I have my coffee and I can live with Colombian coffee in every part of the world. So thank you very much. So
and we like Bogota.
More than welcome at all times. So it's okay with you. I'm going to share a small PowerPoint about. Could you please confirm me that you have the power? Okay. So in this sense, I'm going to show you a little bit of how is the behavior of Venezuelan migration in Colombia, the effects, the challenges, and of course, we're going to talk about the temporary protected status for Venezuela. So then, it is common knowledge that since 2015, due to the weakening of the political and humanitarian conditions, as well as the hyperinflation of Venezuela, there has been a lack of food, medicine, and essential services, causing people to flee the country, seeking to escape from the regime, violence, insecurity, and threats. These flows have led Colombia to become one of the main migrant destinations, currently hosting almost 1.8 million Venezuelans, of which, as of January 2021, 56% have an irregular migratory situation. Initially, these migratory dynamics were thought to be temporary. However, large number of Venezuelans migrants who entered irregularly have the intention of staying, and the consequences of not regularizing them are excessively unfavorable for the migrants and for Colombia, absolutely. Before diving into the consequences of living in irregularity, it is important to have an overall picture of Colombia's location and geography. And I'm going to show you our border zone and the distance of our border zone, but let's check in any case what's happened in the end of 2019, where irregularity won to regularity and change the full paradigm of migration here in Colombia. This is huge numbers for a middle income country. So at the end, how it works with our border. We share, as Colombia, land border with Panama, Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, and of course, Venezuela, with 2,219 kilometers. To put into perspective, the extension is similar to the eastern land border of France with Germany, Luxembourg, Belgium, Switzerland, Italy, and Monaco, just in a row. And in that sense, the Colombian-Venezuelan border, there are particular dynamics due to political, physical, social, and economic context, which is the reason monitoring the irregular migration is virtually impossible, given the extension of the geography and other phenomena around the border. Understanding the enormous challenge this situation possesses, the rock conditions a person has to face to cross the border irregularly, and well as the lack of documentation, entails high risk for migrants. And they include living under dramatic situation of vulnerability, possibly facing exposure to violation of fundamental and human rights, dismemberment of family group, as well as discrimination, xenophobia, labor exploitation, exposure to criminal acts such as humanitarian, such as human trafficking or migrant smuggling, even potential criminal activity due to lack of job opportunities. All these conditions affects notably their life standards. And with regard to the impact in the host country, it potentially could lead to an increase of the informal labor market, reduction of contributions to the economy, such as remittances and taxes, makes identification and prosecution difficult, which along with the lack of access of the characterization of this population limits the scope of public policies. And it is important to keep in mind that when migrants join the economy, they contribute taxes and social security. And this is key considering Latin America is going through one of the worst crises in its history as a result of the pandemic. So being aware of this context, among two other conditions carried out by Colombia since 2015, the country has registered as nationals more than 52,252 children with Venezuelan parents. Additionally, the government has granted migrant access to education, health, and early childhood programs. Specifically, there are 364,523 school enrollments, of which 96% of these children studies in public schools. 84% of the Venezuelan students have an irregular status. And as to health, 17.3% regular migrants have healthcare coverage. In total, there have been more than 9.3 million services to regular and irregular migrants. Additionally, regarding childhood and adolescence programs, there have been 297,819 children covered by the Family Welfare Institute, our authority, of which 6,000 participate of administrative processes for the restoration of rights and the criminal responsibility system for adolescents. And this is really, really a huge program about child in Colombia and the different situation that they are presenting as in a foreign country. So taking into account all of this information, instead of considering overly restrictive policies, Colombia opted by the leadership of our President Iván Duque for the regularization of the Venezuelan populations, since experience shows that as long as there are high restriction of obstacles for regularization, the greater the irregularity is like to be. So therefore, with the leadership of our president, the temporary protected status of Venezuelan migrants, or TPSB, was formulated as a mechanism to offer protection to fundamental rights of migrants, and it will be implemented by the Colombian Migratory Authority that I lead. And it is a mechanism to protect human rights of migrants fleeing their country. It includes the Unified Registry of Venezuelan Migrants and the temporary permanency permit with a term of validity of 10 years, allowing Venezuelans to work in Colombian territory and access the public and private institutional offer. Subsequently, this process facilitates their transit to the ordinary regime of migratory regularization by obtaining a visa, a huge window of 10 years. This is very, very generous and a great time or a space to make it. The characterization resulting from this process will enable Colombia to tear down a barrier, since it provides an approach to make a comprehensive assessment that allows the formulation of targeted public policies of integration aimed at generating well-being for migrants and their families, as well as the adaptation to host community. So the TPSB has flexible measures to react and provide a minimum level of protection as a humanitarian response. Secondly, enables entry permit and regular stay for foreigners fleeing the crisis in Venezuela, provides formal identification, registration and documentation tools to recognize people in vulnerable conditions, seeks protection of migrants who live in Colombia, not only those who intend to enter. So specifically, there are three main activities of the TPSB. First, the online pre-registration, in which biographical, demographic, facial biometrics, immediate family members, and preliminary evidence of permanency in the territory will be collected. The socioeconomic characterization survey, which will also be completed online. And this characterization is key, since it enables us to channel international cooperation resources, and it will also allow us to move forward more efficiently in processes related to educational inclusion, as well as financial and health, including vaccination, the Venezuelan migrant population against COVID, on equal terms as the Colombian nationals. Also, on-site biometric registration enrollment in blue, which include facial fingerprints and signature data, as well as the validation of the information provided early in the process. And with the foregoing, the issuance of the permit represents the restoration of the migrant dignity. That's really, really important. It grants the rights and duties in the Colombian territory. They will be able to recover self-confidence and trust in the society, dignifying their situation, reducing xenophobia and discrimination, as well as allowing them to access a regular job under conditions of equality. So the Unified Register of Venezuelan Migrants includes biometric, demographic, and biographic information for identification and registration. The information cannot be used for sanctions. Migrants have to prove they were already in Colombian territory with different and flexible documents. And each registered person is responsible for keeping the information to date. As to the temporary protection permit, the ID constitutes a regularization mechanism. It is a physical and digital document. Actually, we're working in the formats. I have two examples here. This is one of the examples that we want to present, and we are working. This is one of us. And if you check it with our cédula, our document in Colombia is very similar, and a decent document. So that temporary protection permit, it's a physical and digital document. It enables the person to stay in Colombia and pursue any legal activity, and credits time for type R visa. That's the change, the transit to an ordinary regime. Of course, all this can only be possible if the Venezuelan migrant agrees to be part of the registry, and he or she cannot have the legal and administrative processes. Our goals for 2021 include over 1.5 million pre-registered Venezuelans, of which 800,000 people are expected to make the online process on their own, and 700,000 are estimated to be assisted in specific booths. Additionally, we're going to achieve the enrollment of 800,000 Venezuelans this year with their specific documents just before December of this year, starting basically on October. So the TPS has an innovative approach. It has 10-year windows, 10-year window for those with the intention of staying in Colombia. Secondly, it enables transit to obtain visa. It enables the Venezuelan irregular migrants to apply for the TPSB for those who entered the country before February 2021. It allows regular migrants passing to an immigration checkpoint within the next 2 years to apply TPSB, which means there is no need for them to mobilize massively. And it tears down barriers by generating trust among different actors and establishments such as banks and potential employers. It introduces an integrated facial fingerprint and signature identification along with a multi-biometric recognition engine. This is great technology for Colombia. And I would like to point that Colombia is the first country to implement the TPS in Latin America. It's the third TPS in the world. So it's a huge challenge for us as a country with some difficulties. We're not a rich country, as you absolutely know. So through regularization and characterization, Colombia is committed to support Venezuelan migrants, reaffirming their rights and generating a whole infrastructure to integrate them. Of course, there are some challenges the country is facing in order to integrate the Venezuelan migrants into society. Regarding the health sector, the deficit in the social security system, the mass vaccination, and strengthening territorial capacities are some of the variables that we have to work on. As to education, we have to improve the coverage along with increasing the permanence rate, provide the necessary supplies, make the necessary curriculum, content adjustments, and others. We also have to improve the infrastructure, as well as increase the territorial and technical capacity to enhance the coverage of the childhood and adolescence program. And taking into account these challenges deriving from the implementation of the TPSB, it is clear that there has to be joint efforts from different public institutions. This means we are working on coordinating processes between national and local authorities. Colombia's government has determined 5 key or enabling sectors to achieve effective inclusion of Venezuelan migrants. These are work, education, health, childhood and adolescence, as well as social programs. With these efforts, there have been some specific actions that have been established to allow the TPSB to be successful and guarantee access to the basic institutional offers and promote the same living standards and Colombian nationals. Therefore, there are different scenarios for the coordination of different sectors, finance, statistics, social policy, among others, in order to integrate Venezuelan migrants into society, promote the access to social programs, and generate tools and mechanisms to follow the impact of the economy. And it is important to note that the TPSB, it's a path and not a final destination. And in this sense, there is a real possibility for people with a lack of opportunities who have lost hope to have another chance and even establish themselves in the country. However, aside from the mechanism provided by Colombia to integrate migrants into society, we have to keep in mind the responsibility of going forward depends on a great measure on the international cooperation, efforts from other countries, as well as the migrants' will. And this is a central point. So Colombia has also promoted and will continue to lead efforts to mobilize, this is my cell phone ringing. Hold a second, please. So let me know if you're looking again my screen.
Yes.
Okay, sorry for the
We didn't hear anything either.
Okay, thank you very much. So Colombia has also promoted and will continue to lead this effort to mobilize a coordinated response among the countries hosting Venezuelan migrants, encouraging the support of international community to address the humanitarian response to the multidimensional crisis. And lastly, sorry, understanding we are citizens of the world, and we have witnessed the determination of the Venezuelan migrants. We recognize everyone deserves opportunities for a better future, which is the reason we want to make our contribution to support this population by promoting better living standards for them. We encourage the international community to walk along with us and with them down this path. So thank you very much, and I'm very open to hear your questions, comments, and to continue constructing this dream for Colombia and this opportunity for a lot of families that really need it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all this information. But we have this extraordinary chance now offered by the ambassador of Turkey to have the possibility to compare also these initiatives and situation with another very important one, which is the one of Turkey. Therefore, I want to welcome, so hoş geldiniz to the director of Turkey, Savaş Ünlü, to participate to our discussion. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning and good afternoon. I would like to express, at the beginning of my remarks, I would like to express my pleasure to be together with you at this online meeting, where we will be able to share our experiences or knowledge with each other. And from the very outset, I would like to, I wish this meeting will be successful, will yield positive results for all of us and for all the people in need, for the migrants in need. And I wish we will be able to come together in face-to-face meeting in health days as soon as possible. As you're all aware, with nearly 80 million forcibly displaced persons and more than 4 million asylum seekers, the current migration situation in the world is alarming. As Turkey, we have had our more than fair share in hosting refugees since 2011. Mass flows from Syria has not yet degraded to zero. Irregular migration flows from some Asian countries, particularly Afghanistan, also continue to pressure us from our eastern borders. This has carried us to the top of the list of the countries which hosting the largest number of refugees in the world. We are currently, as you all know, hosting more than 3.6 million Syrians, who are, and those people are under the temporary protection status in Turkey. In addition to Syrians, over 300,000 people of other nationalities are living in Turkey under international protection, either as a status holder or applicants. In addition to those under various protection status, there are also more than 1 million residence permit holders in Turkey. These people, resident permit holders, are from very different countries, ranging from Central Asian countries to Western European countries, people from Western European countries who prefer spending their times in Turkey rather than their own countries. Overall, the total figure of foreign nationals living in Turkey is over 5 million. In this slide, you see the institutional and legal framework in the migration management in Turkey. As a Directorate General of Migration Management, we are the main institution who is in charge of regulating the field. Yet, as you can imagine, 5 million foreigners have different needs, different services should be provided to those people. And this fact necessitates the involvement of other institutions and other ministries in the process. What I want to say here is that we believe that cooperation and coordination among these different institutions, different actors, different ministries, particularly key for successful migration management, because otherwise it's impossible to manage such an extremely diverse responsibility areas, which is closely linked with migration, such as education, healthcare, employment, social support, etc. Therefore, we are always in touch with relevant ministries, and all local directorates in the provinces are in close contact with their local offices in 81 provinces of Turkey. Of course, the coordination is mainly in the responsibility of Turkish Ministry of Interior. As the Directorate General of Migration Management, we are part of the Ministry of Interior in Turkey. Therefore, Ministry of Interior takes up a coordinating role among all ministries with regard to migration. Our minister is the head of Migration Board, which gathers senior representatives of relevant ministries once or more each year to discuss the migration situation in Turkey. We build our migration policies after consultation and a long deliberation process in this migration board. In this board, the representatives, deputy ministers and ministers from all other relevant ministries and representatives from all other institutions are participating in the board, and we discuss all the issues in this board in a highly detailed way. And this is the main board where we decide on implementing new policies and new rules. In the field, we also work in close cooperation with civil, national, and international organizations. On the right side, alongside this institutional framework, on the right side of the slide, you see the migration legislative framework. Main document is the Law on Foreigners and International Protection. That is a framing document that regulates all actions and procedures regarding the foreign nationals in Turkey, as well as the area of human trafficking. We have a separate document with regard to the procedures to be applied for Syrians living under temporary protection. This regulation entered into force in 2014. Within the framework of our law and regulations, we have also drafted a strategy document on migration, as well as 2 national action plans on irregular migration and harmonization. Alongside a robust institutional and legal framework, establishing an effective monitoring and assessment system, also an important aspect of a successful migration management. In line with the goals of our strategy document and national action plans, we established technical committees in each subsections of these action plans and strategy documents. And all these subcommittees, technical committees, are chaired by the DGMM, Directorate General of Migration Management. And these committees come together with the representatives. The representatives of all the institutions and ministries come together within the umbrella of these technical committees on regular intervals in order to assess the situation, where we are, where we need to go, what is our current situation. And these platforms provide a very effective and efficient technical platforms to discuss the details of the issues, and the results of this platform is being submitted to the migration board through various reports. We also pay attention to remain in contact with international institutions such as UNHCR, IAM, and ICMPT. Keeping these contacts enable us to monitor the situation in the field closely and adjust our priorities accordingly. We also attach importance to align our national immigration policies with the international documents that we are a party to, such as UN Global Compacts and Sustainable Development Goals. In addition to national and international cooperation, Turkey also participates in 9 binding regional migration processes, each of which focus on specific areas depending on the regional situation. For instance, Budapest process is a migration cooperation platform which mostly focuses on irregular migration. whereas Bali process is centered around elimination of human trafficking. Another regional migration process that we are member to is the Almaty process, which aims to tackle the migration issues and problems in the larger Central Asian countries. Currently, since the beginning of this year, we are holding the chairmanship of this process, and we will continue to preside this process for the upcoming 2 years. Now, I would like to talk about Turkey's response to mass influx of Syrians and our harmonization efforts. The flow from Syria to Turkey, which began with only 2,052 people in 2011, has now reached 3.6 million Syrians. This huge population now lives under our protection. To stress the gravity of the situation, I would like to express that the Syrian population in Turkey is now larger than the entire population of some European countries. Upon the onset of the crisis, we pledged to grant protection to all Syrians by pursuing an open door policy and provided their basic needs. Placing Syrians under protection, we also granted them right to education, healthcare services, all free of charge, social assistance, and access to labor markets. After successfully providing the basic humanitarian needs at the initial stages of the mass influx of Syrians, in the following years, we came up a new challenge, which is the harmonizations of migrants and the Turkish community, Turkish society. To clarify our path, we drafted a strategy document and a national action plan on harmonization. This document was created with the contribution of all relevant ministries and approved by the Board of Migration, where I have just mentioned in detail. This document and national action plan composed of 5 sections. The first, community involvement. The second, informative activities. The third, education, health, social support, and access to labor markets. To facilitate the harmonization of migrants, keeping them informed of their rights and obligations is the key. By establishing a call center, we made it possible for them to access any needed information by dialing 157, and this service is a globalized service. Or mobile application, we have also a very effectively working mobile application, which is available for those who seek to reach information for public services online. We have established migration information centers in many provinces as well. And migrants can contact us in person through these migration information centers. We also organize community outreach meetings for various segments of migrants and host community members, such as women and youth. And actually, I can give more examples about the details of these meetings, but these meetings and bringing together the refugee communities and host community is also a very important part of our harmonization efforts. Of course, vocational and language courses, which are regularly held to equip migrants with technical and language skills they might need in social life and for employment purposes as well, is also another important facet of the migration harmonization efforts. If you let me now, I will wrap up my words by presenting some examples about Turkey's best practices. When thousands of Syrians began rushing to our borders in 2011, we mobilized our human and financial resources to respond to the emerging crisis. However, an influx with such dimensions was not that easy to handle. Proper registration of thousands of people within days was highly challenging, and initially we collected only some basic personal information during the initial stages of this mass influx of Syrians. However, after the escalation of the situation, we initiated a new project to update their data on our system. At the verification center, we established protection desks to identify any persons with special needs. Detailed interviews are held with persons with special needs in order to refer them to the relevant public institutions, which in order to provide to make sure that they will provide the sufficient support. For instance, women who are victims of violence are referred to the shelters. Unaccompanied children are referred to the Provincial Directorate of Family and Social Service. Another one of our successful practices is in the field of biometric data management system. In order to facilitate the notification obligation procedures for international protection applicants and conditional refugees, we installed kiosks at the local offices. We made it possible for them to fulfill their obligation while self-scanning their fingerprints rather than signing a document by meeting with one of our local officers. Embedding biometric data to our system both relieved the workload of local migration officers and reduced the time spent for the fulfillment of this obligation. As I earlier stated, migration is a field with the implication in multiple areas. Therefore, it must be managed in cooperation and coordination with the relevant institutions and ministries. We have so far succeeded in integrating our migrant database with the system used by 22 different public institutions in Turkey. This includes Turkish police, Turkish Coast Guard, Turkish Ministry of Health, Turkish Ministry of Education, as well as the systems used by Turkish Civil Registration Population Services. Over the past 8 years, Turkey's migration management capacity and capability have been greatly enhanced. Involvement of host community in migration management process is key because harmonization, I believe this remark is important. What Turkey believes, what we believe is harmonization is not just one-sided, one-faceted process. It's a two-sided process. Therefore, it should be involvement, it necessitates the involvement of not just refugee communities, but also host communities. Integration between information system of relevant ministries is also another significant step in ensuring the provision of uninterrupted public services to migrants. We have learned that building solid national policies is the key, yet it's not sufficient. All these solid national policies must be aligned with strong international cooperation, must be supported with international cooperation. Actually, what we believe is the field of migration, this includes both the situation of asylum seekers, those who are seeking international protections, but this is also valid for irregular migration. The issue of migration is a transborder issue, and we cannot overcome this issue within our national borders. We need to enhance our efforts in order to establish much more robust and effective international mechanisms through which we will be able to address the root causes of the issue. Therefore, establishing successful regional and international cooperation, participating in this kind of platforms has been also an important part of our strategy, and we believe so far we have been significantly contributed by our international partners and allies. So actually, from Turkey, these are the main themes that I believe we can share at this stage in this limited time. Thank you very much, and I wish you success once again.
Teşekkür ederim. Thank you
My
very
pleasure.
much. It was very helpful, and we have a last intervention, and then we will open the floor for some question. So prepare in case you have a point to raise now. And now let me give the floor to the migration officer, Charles Obila, that is from IGAD.
Thank you very much, Mario, and
How
good
are
morning.
you? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. Good morning, good afternoon, colleagues. I must say that when I was invited to this meeting, I could not resist, largely because the two countries perhaps offer one of the most ideal potentials for migrants integration and refugee inclusion into the national development strategies. Having said that, for those who may not know, IGAD is an acronym for Intergovernmental Authority on Development. It has a membership of 7 member states. It is in the Horn of Africa, with the Secretariat in Djibouti, where I am currently based. In terms of migration and displacement, we host one of the highest concentration of displaced population. Yeah? Currently, we host close to 13 million displaced population, comprising of around 8 million IDPs and 4 million refugees. Most of these caseloads are actually protracted. They begin for as far as 1991, when we had the first displacement from Somalia. And more recently, we have displacements from South Sudan as recent as 7 years ago in 2013. But even now, as we speak, there are new displacements, largely from Ethiopia. Having said that, in terms of the drivers of displacement, it's mainly conflict, but we are seeing more and more drivers, climatic and natural disasters intensifying and also compounding the drivers of forced displacement in the region. In terms of the approaches, I would say that initially, especially in the 90s, all up the way until, say, 2014, 2016, displacement was largely seen as a temporary phenomenon. It was expected that the situation would resolve and people would be able to go back to their homes. And imagine this was, say, since 2000, sorry, I have some background noise. I don't know where that is coming from.
Could you please turn off your microphone if you are not connected? Let's try this way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. So if you were to go back to the history, until only around 2014, most of the displacement was mainly addressed as a humanitarian phenomenon because they were considered temporary and situations would normalize, people would be able to go back to their home. And perhaps that was the greatest hindrance to, say, integration, yeah? Because it took a long time and there was a huge caseload of demand of population that required to be integrated. Having said that, again, the countries in the region mainly had encampment policies. So refugees were kept in camps, mainly in peripheral areas which were least developed, in border areas with limited services. Again, that created more burden, say, to the service infrastructure or to the facilities that were in those border areas. And therefore, it meant that there was also a little bit of tension between the host communities and the refugee population. But having said that, around 2014, beginning 2012, we had a regional migration policy framework that looks at both migration and refugee. And it speaks to about regional approaches or regional migration governance. And migration, again, includes the issues of refugees. And it promotes this regional approach. And it promoted also dialogue and exchange between different countries in the region. Having done that, we also took advantage of the 2016 Leader Summit in New York that led to the adoption of the Global Compact for Refugees and the Global Compact for Migration. And specifically on refugees, we also agreed as a region to be the pilot area for the implementation of the Comprehensive Refugee Response Framework, CRRF. This started around 2017 when the heads of states of IGAD countries met in Nairobi and adopted the Nairobi Declaration for the protection of Somali refugees and also their return back to Somalia, creating an enabling environment for return. The weakness that was envisioned in that particular, that was entailed in the Nairobi Declaration was the fact that it was targeting only the Somali refugees. So the member state then reflected and said that, let's not discriminate against the other displaced populations in the region. So they were able to open it up in December 2017 to include all the displaced population within the IGAD territory. And then they also took a thematic focus, like areas where they felt there was need to promote inclusion or integration. And the thematic areas that were identified were in education, health, and livelihood and self-reliance. Following that, they also agreed to develop like thematic commitments. So on, say, health, what would that entail? It would entail documentation, it would entail access to basic services or access to health from any health facility, particularly the public health system. It would also entail, documentation in terms of just issuance of IDs and also policy changes. And we also benefited from countries within the region in the sense that at that particular time, a country like Uganda already had this out-of-camp model. So through regular follow-up and regular dialogue between the member states, we were able to see that the other countries were borrowing from the practice in Uganda, and they were able to repeal their policies to promote the inclusion or the integration of migrants. This was followed by, say, a country like Ethiopia repealing its refugee proclamation in 2018, a country like Djibouti repealing its Refugee Act in 2017, and some of them also adopting specific commitments on the thematic area. A country like Djibouti, which is the only Francophone country in the Horn of Africa, partnered with Kenya, because Kenya had hosted refugees who are English speaking and they have their curriculum in English, yet Djibouti was French speaking with French curriculum, but hosting refugees from Somali who are English speaking. So they partnered with Kenya because of the common language between the refugees in terms of English, and they were able to have like a regularization of curriculum and standardization of curriculum in English in Djibouti, which also allowed for certification of refugees in Djibouti, despite the fact that they were educated in English. We followed that again with the second declaration on livelihood, where countries, again, committed to open up their systems by allowing refugees to even move out of camps, by opening up the camps themselves to be settlements. A country like Ethiopia committed to allow refugees to move out of camps and to promote employment, at least in the industrial parks, for at least 30% of the refugee population and 70% to the host community. So there was a balanced approach between the host communities and the displaced population. In countries like Uganda, for them, of course, it was mainly, they had already an out-of-camp settlement, but there was the need to also allow people to move freely. Of course, they had initially what we call the refugee card that would allow people to move out, but more and more we are seeing that they have now adopted a national plan of action, specifically on self-reliance, where they are able to tailor their approaches or identify the priorities that will promote the refugees to be employed or to create employment within their, in Uganda. The other thing that we are seeing is, of course, the linkages between the host countries and the countries of origin, in the sense that, you know, still, in terms of the approach, people still feel that there will be opportunity for people to go back. But you have to tie in, since people are staying in protracted displacement for so long, there's the need to regularize, say, when it comes to employment and skills development, you standardize the approaches between the host countries and the countries of origin, so that when people, the opportunity presents itself for refugees to go back, they are easily able to integrate into the labor market. We've seen that partnership mainly between countries, say like Somalia, Sudan itself, and Sudan is particularly unique in the sense that they host one of the highest refugee caseloads, but the majority of that population is actually out of camp. So people are fully integrated with the host community and you do not have a lot of tension there. Countries like Kenya, they are piloting, because for them, Kenya still practices encampments settlement. They are trying to pilot in those camp areas, and they are piloting initiatives within the camps itself, but integrating it with the neighboring host community through integrated planning. So in a context specific rather than policy at a policy level where you start with blanket inclusion and blanket integration. We are seeing, if you are to look, say, between 2015 and 2020, we can see progression towards openness and towards integration, or I would say inclusion. Yeah, integration is also very political because it touches on certain rights that say the host countries do not want to extend that far. Say, for example, political participation or naturalization. But inclusion then is just to ensure that they are able to participate, say, in livelihood opportunities, and they are able to create jobs and ensure that they do not just sit still and wait for humanitarian assistance. But we've seen overall that there's generally progression towards, I would say, more inclusion and more self-reliance for both host communities and refugees or the displaced population. But perhaps as a wrap up, the main challenges, one is just the number of the caseloads. Yeah, in the region, we've never had an incidence where the number of displaced population, say, goes down. The trend has always been upward. In 2000, we had a total of 4 million displaced population. Now we are talking about 12, 13 million. That is almost 3 times the caseloads that we had before. So that in a way restricts the potential to which, or the extent to which host countries are able, say, to provide services or to open up the system to really integrate refugees and forced displacement. The other thing is also we have a number of conflicts, and not just in the region. There are other conflicts, say the Syrian crisis, you have the Venezuelan crisis, and all these perhaps compete for resources from the same donors. So you'll find that the global support or the partnership that you're getting is not increasing, perhaps it's actually declining. And therefore, the model now is shifting a bit from, say, international support more to opening up the system and viewing refugees as potential solutions to the problems that they face, whereby we are saying that if we open up the system and allow refugees to work, maybe we do not need to provide them with the humanitarian assistance. They'll be able to provide their own means. They'll be able to sustain themselves. And this has been shown particularly for those refugees that live in urban areas, because again, the potential there is much better than this, say, those who are hosted in the camp settlements, because the opportunities are more. This is one thing that also governments are slowly buying into. But of course, our decision in a way, they are not binding per se. So again, member states are encouraged to open up to the extent they see possible. And in that, you will see that the progression is very slow, but at least if you compare over time, we are seeing progression. I would stop here. Perhaps I would encourage, if there are any questions for clarification, then I would come back with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. It was very, very interesting. And you also highlighted a point that appeared also in other presentation that at a certain moment in time we will have to address seriously, which is the relationship between international cooperation and the addressing migrants and the problem in countries. It's a complex issue also because some of the other areas we have analyzed are middle income or even high income countries, and therefore they are not even entitled to traditional cooperation. But there are new forms of cooperation from other countries. Therefore, here we have a very important subject, and thank you, my brother, for highlighting it. That's very, very interesting. Now, I am a really bad moderator, so we have invested a lot of time. But the reason is that I was so interested in listening what was said that I didn't even think to stop a presentation and other things. So is there anybody that wants to raise the hand by using the technology that I don't know how to use, but it's this yellow hand that is there? If not, I saw a question in the debate. So whilst you are thinking, maybe I can just recall it. Rafael Quintero has stressed an important point by saying, look, in reality, the point in Colombia is even much bigger because there are Colombians that have been expelled from Venezuela. And also there are a lot of mixed Colombian and Venezuela families. So the flows are even bigger. And as a consequence, the question raised is, how do you prevent xenophobia in the places where migration land, which is obviously a major question of big nature. I don't know if anybody wants to address or if anybody wants to raise an hand. We have Federico that wants to raise an hand.
No, I just want to say that we have Gloria and Thomas. Sorry.
Yes, it's true. I have to raise my glasses in reality of the graduation. So let me ask Thomas, and then I will ask Gloria.
Thank you, Mario, and thank you very much for these very interesting presentations. I have a question with respect to Juan Espinosa's presentation on the regularization. I think it's very impressive how you're trying to link the different systems also into providing a database and building a database on in this respect. So one big challenge clearly that a lot of countries are facing, and I'm sure Turkey can also say a few words on that, is verification of the data. And here particular with respect also to the passports. Probably a lot of the Venezuelans who have entered will not have the right papers. And how do you verify that in that process to make sure that the right persons basically get access? And what alternatives do you have at your disposal for those who don't have it to make sure that they can also access to the measures that you're proposing? Thank you.
Thank you. Gloria, do you want to say something before we give the floor to?
Yes, actually, Mario, yes, this is a question, and regarding the issue that this public policy to attract, I mean, to protect the migrants, it has like a human rights protection sentiment, but also it is an opportunity to structure the resilient recovery that the economy needs. I would like to know if from Turkey or even the Development Center has a measure or an estimation about the impact of the ratio between migration flows and the growth of GDP. Actually, I don't know if it's from Colombia, since there are a lot of new data. There is a new measurement because it has a sense also regarding the economic recovery and to protect all the migrants. It is a new labor people in the labor market. So just to know if there is any way to have this kind of measurement. It is a question. Thank you, Mario.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands that is raised. So maybe what we can do is with in mind these three questions, the one that I said about xenophobia, the one of Thomas and the one of Gloria, if we can give back the floor to our panelists and then ask them to give us a very short answer, but I know that they are so sharp that they will concentrate everything in that short answer. So let's start maybe with the national experience. So let's start with Juan Francisco, then Turkey, if our colleague is still there, then we will go to Jean-Christophe. And please, Juan Francisco.
Thank you very much, Mario. Very interesting points and a quick answer. First, one of the biggest challenges of this process is that Thomas pointed out, is that Venezuelan people in a lot of cases do not have any ID at this moment. That includes childhood with this kind of problems. So the tricky point is to mix a safety program with some kind of ID, a basic ID, but with real inclusion or with a real decision to include a lot of people. So in that sense, this day, actually, we executed our resolution that includes that process. And that means that any Venezuelan will prove their identity with a copy or with a digital copy of their document or physical copy of their document. But doing that without any document is not possible, because if it is not safety for the Colombian government, for the Colombian population, and also for the Venezuelans, because we need to protect first kids, and we cannot sponsor the taking out of kids outside of Venezuela, for example. So always we will need a document. Secondly, Rafael Quintero from Colombia presents something about xenophobia. Look, Colombians, we are not a xenophobic country. We are very open, but we need to advance understanding migration, and that's a huge challenge. So we need better opportunities for Colombian and also for Venezuelans, where nationality is not a difference. I mean, we need to advance in inclusion and advance in opportunity without thinking this is Colombian, this is Venezuela. No, we need to advance and to have additional opportunities. And in that sense, the international cooperation is very, very important for us. I think quick answer for the other panelists. Thank you very much, Mario.
You are very efficient and very on the point. Thank you very much, Juan Francisco. I don't know if Turkey wants to come in on one of the questions, Ambassador, or our director, Ünlü. Yes. Yes, please, Director Savaş.
Yeah, if you let me, I will try to respond. If I'm not wrong, as much as I could catch, the question was about how we provide identity card to those people that have come to Turkey without any formal documents. If I'm not wrong, that was the inquiry, right?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, that's an important point, and that's one of the challenges we are regularly facing in the field. And it's not just for the Syrians either. So most of the vast majority of irregular migrants are coming to Turkey either without any formal documents, or even if they come to Turkey with some formal documents through the legal channels, if they aim to go to Europe, for example, through illegal channels, they destroy their own documents themselves in order to disguise, you know. Therefore, having a vast, well-working, efficient biometric data management system is very important. So this is what we have done so far. This is what we are trying to do. For most of the Syrians that came to Turkey during the initial stages of the Syrian civil war, some of them came with their own passports, travel documents, but some of them didn't have anything. So we recorded their own biometric data. Those data includes their fingerprints, all facial characteristics, facial and other physical characteristics, their all the certificates they have. But on many cases, yes, you need to record them according to their own declaration. But once we have established a huge biometric data management system, if it's not today, in next year, other year, on one point, you understand if there is any maltreatment or misuse of the system by the migrants themselves. So this is the very short answer that I can say at this stage.
Teşekkür ederim. Now, let me ask, therefore, to Jean-Christophe, maybe if we have still, sorry, Jean-Christophe, Charles, do you want to, if you are here, to take one of the questions?
No addition at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Jean-Christophe, do you want to add some?
Yes, thank you very much, Mario, and thank you to the three presenters for indeed very complimentary and very rich presentation. I've learned a lot on some of these details that were shared. Just to try to answer to Gloria's question, this is a long-standing issue in migration research, the question you ask. We have published a policy brief which is trying to summarize this research. I'm sharing that in the chat. you can take a look. The short answer is that migration proves to be positive for the economy in absolute terms. It always adds to the GDP. That's clear. What is more challenging in terms of a response is, does it add to GDP per capita? And here there are many issues to take into account, and notably the question of the integration. Migrants bring their workforce, they bring skills, and they bring a capacity to innovate and contribute to digital transformation of the economy, for example. But for that, they need to have the chance to use their skills. And that's where the challenge lies in a number of countries. We will, ELS, produce in the next International Migration Outlook a special chapter on the analysis of the fiscal impact of migration, looking at what migrants get and what they contribute in terms of fiscal contribution. The highlights which I can share as of today is that you will find in this publication that migrants contribute more in taxes and social contribution than they receive in individual benefits, meaning they contribute to finance public goods. This is true everywhere, but the extent to which this is true depends on the quality of the integration. So certainly Colombia is doing the right thing right now to make sure that Venezuelan migrants are used at their best.
Let me ask also to Jason and Mona if they want to add something to the question or answer some aspects, and then I have Federico and Federico is saying no. So do you want to add something, Jason or Mona?
Thanks, Mario. I posted a question in the chat, but I'll put it out on the floor as well. I think it would be interesting to hear about certificate or diploma recognition in these contexts, especially there's presumably always a selection, a very heavy selection in migration in outside of forced displacement. In the forced displacement context, that selection would presumably be lower because, I mean, you're leaving because of conflict, because you're forced in essence, and so you would imagine that the distribution of the skills in that group might be a little bit more uniform. So you have in your hosting countries, you have a higher likelihood of having lots of highly skilled, educated individuals in the group, and I think it would be interesting to hear how countries are facing the challenge of trying to integrate that group into society through their credentials and through the skills that they bring by recognizing those skills, which is particularly difficult when you have maybe little connection with the origin country if it's in conflict.
Thank you. We have also, so Mona, is fine with you, or you have something to add? Fine. Okay, Alexander Hume, I see raised the hand. If you have a short intervention, because we are, Alexander?
Yes, thank you. I have a question for Mr. Espinosa. He mentioned in his presentation the need for mass vaccination of Venezuelan migrants. I wondered if that was mostly related to just COVID-19, or if some of these migrants are also in need of the standard childhood vaccinations, and how is that tracked and managed?
Thank you. Very precise question. So we have two questions, one about the diplomas, the other about the vaccination. And then after I will ask if anybody of yours would like to try. I think that in any case, Espinosa is obliged to do so because it was directed to him, one of the two questions. And then I will give the floor to Gloria to conclude. So let's start with Juan Francisco. If anybody else wants to add to answer one of the two, is welcome. Juan Francisco.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna switch again to my PowerPoint just to point out one thing. It's look what it happened with the migration of Venezuela. And what I want to say here. This situation started 2007, 2011. But first people to leave Venezuela was rich people. I mean, people with a lot of funds to be established in Europe, in North America, but not necessarily in Colombia. But that situation was decreasing at all times. And from 1.5 years to up to the date, the situation of migrants of Venezuela is vulnerable people. That means that the movements of people is about families with really bad situation. And if we check the picture of the traveler or the migrant, a few years ago, we found lonely travelers. But at this moment, we're finding full families with little kids, with the extended family walking. Just to put in context, they are walking between our border zone to our capital here in Bogota, 22 days, sorry, on a continuous basis, sleeping in any floor. I mean, in any case, not in a proper site or in a proper hotel, and walking with only a few clothes for 22 days. And that means that the huge problem that we have here with migration is that the Venezuelan people does not have at this moment any hope. And that's a huge problem, because trying to construct with people without hope, it's very different. Secondly, when we review, and that's one of the important points of the chat, when we check the funds of international cooperation in a comparison of Turkey and Colombia, with all my respect and our respect, the cooperation for the Venezuelan situation, it's under 10%. Under 10% of the cooperation of Turkey. And our partner of Turkey will also comment us that there's not enough money in Turkey to attend this situation. So just believe, or let me know what you're gonna do with the situation under 10% of international cooperation. We need support and we need help under a political situation. We need to defend this kind of systems, but also we need to materialize the inclusion programs. And that means funds to start working in better education, better healthcare system, and all that your OECD knows very, very, very good. Talking or speaking about vaccination, this is not only a COVID problem. Of course, the socioeconomic survey that we will apply starting this Wednesday will help us to locate people and to include those Venezuelans into the Colombian program of vaccination. And that means that the pandemic situation does not difference between a Colombian or a Venezuelan in the middle of a pandemic situation. That means we need to apply that vaccine to a people that present some situation that, because of the age, for example, needs urgently the vaccine, and that will help us. But note in any case that vaccines does not exist in Venezuela long time ago. Actually, 1.5 years ago, we have a measles problem in Colombia. And that was exactly because of not applying vaccines. So at this moment, what we're doing with international cooperation is to help childhood, applying vaccines for the elementary diseases in order to prevent a disaster for these kids. So So it's a huge challenge, and these kind of challenges are more than public policy, are a lot of situations presented in the border zone with childhood, with people with some limitation, for example, and that means money, and that means a decision. I'm very proud of being leading this process, because at the end it's about families and people, and it is not easy to be in front of a process where you are helping really in front of the people that are in a difficult situation. But this process corresponds not to Colombia, corresponds to the whole world that has to cooperate and has to be in a union to fund and to solve a situation that has not been created by Colombia. Sorry for the extension of the answer, Mario.
No, thank you. I think that we have Director Savaş Ünlü that wants to come back. Please.
Thank you very much. I would like to say a few things about the remarks of the comparison between Turkey and the international foundation between Turkey and Colombia. From the outset, I would like to express my best regards to my Colombian colleagues. And as a principle, I do not find it, to compare these two countries. Each of them has under a huge burden of migration. That's not I don't want to do it, but just to respond to the earlier remarks, I would like to say that unfortunately the support of international support Turkey has received over the recent years was unfortunately not sufficient. I mean, it's not sufficient. Unfortunately, it was highly minimal in comparison to the financial resources that we have mobilized through our own national sources. So far, for just Syrian refugees, we have spent more than $40 billion money through our national resources. What we have received from the EU and other international organizations was unfortunately below 8 million euros. This was the initial figure that agreed on between Turkey and EU as part of the 18 March Declaration. And in 2016, what EU promised to us was to mobilize the total amount of 6 million euros until the end of 2018. However, so far the actualization of this fund remained only slightly above 4 million euros. But in comparison to that international support, the amount we spent through our national resources above 40 million United States dollars. Therefore, I totally empathize with Colombia. I fully agree, and I sincerely believe they deserve much more international support. But I would like to highlight that the international support Turkey has received so far was also not appropriate in comparison to the money we have spent through our own resources. Thank you very much.
Teşekkür ederim. Ambassador Arkin.
I would like to add that what Colombia and Turkey try to do is an explanation of success, what we try to do perhaps, because it's really priceless what we try to do for the humanity, because we try to do our best for the immigrant issue by the global values exactly. So it is more than resources the both countries try to do for the immigrants exactly. And just in a minute, in a second, just imagine that on the borders, thousands of maybe children, they escape from a civil war, and then on your country, you create some special art centers for the plastic arts, for the music arts, and different kind of issues to change their views to the world. So I would like to say that what Colombia and Turkey succeed to do is just like try to change their life and also their look, their view to the world. So I would like to congratulate Colombia for that, and also I was working on the borders for my country as an economist for these issues. Hundred thousands of girls, women for the textile industry, special mobilized training centers in the trucks. We try to do our best for all kinds of issues without any international support. So that's why I would like to applaud all the secret heroes for that issues. Maybe Mr. Ünlü could say some other words. I don't know.
If you allow me, I can jump in this moment because, dear ambassador, you have an ambassador of you, in a certain sense, in the OECD, which is called Angel Gurria, because Angel Gurria visited Gaziantep.
Yes, I know.
And visited the center, and so in many occasions, he has shared with us the very strong impression that he, his wife, received by visiting exactly the experience that you have described for the children and so on. And so I think we have been impressed by this souvenir that you are now recalling that are remarkable. And I'm sure that something very similar is happening in Colombia. So, but as we are speaking, if you allow me, I would like to add one point. This discussion, and also the point that was raised before by Charles, highlight the fact that our present system of cooperation is, and we know, is a system that was built some decades ago, and it does not, I mean, I'm speaking about the official development assistance, is not necessarily equipped to deal with these extreme cases and situations. That's why in the center, some years ago, we launched an initiative that's called Development in Transition, just to say the world is transitioning to a different situation with different actors, different objectives, different modalities of cooperation. And we have therefore to rethink the system, because at present, as we see, and as we saw also with the COVID pandemic, the present cooperation maybe is not prepared to fully respond to the points that we have raised. I see that Savaş Ünlü is still raising a finger. Let me say the last words and then I give the floor to Gloria, please.
Okay.
I want to stress the passion that we are seeing in this discussion, and there is a reason, is what Alki said.
Just a small addition. With regards to vaccination, I would like to say something. As part of our humanitarian efforts, we are also implementing vaccination for all Syrian refugees and international, for those under international protection. Totally based on the same criteria with the Turkish nationals. So far in Turkey, since the launch of the vaccination, more than 21 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines have been implemented. And with a very rough calculation, because the total 5% of total population in Turkey is foreign nationals, we can estimate that roughly more than 500,000 of refugees or international protection holders have been vaccinated for COVID-19 pandemic. That was what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
No, but thank you, because I think these two cases really may help us in building cases for what we call multilateral experimentalism. We need to build a stronger multilateralism, and we have to start from somewhere. And these cases, this example, are extremely helpful in that perspective. So thank you very much. Thank you for the very enriching discussion. I think we often say in the OECD that we do policy dialogue and we compare experiences, but sometimes what we compare is already prepared speeches for the minister that are prepared in the closet, and when there is a meeting is read in the parliament or in a meeting of the OECD. That's not real comparison. But my feeling is that in this seminar, we went much further and we really discussed in what is the real sense of comparison. It's not to see who is the best or who is the worst position. It's rather to learn from diversity, because we are in different countries and this diversity is enriching us. And with this word, let me enrich you with a very always interesting and warm words from Gloria Alonso that I want to thank once more, muy querida. Gloria, a ti la palabra.
Gracias, Mario. Yes, and thank you. I really want to thank you, everyone, for bringing the migrant phenomenon into this great and beautiful discussion. As we saw today, in this specific situation, the disadvantages for migrants are worsening in times like this. These insightful discussions today demonstrates the importance of having this exchange at the multilateral level, since these issues have global effects. From the Colombian experience, we would also like to recall that any migratory policy must have a comprehensive perspective. And as Jean-Christophe mentioned, the action needs to be stressed in parallel from all fronts and understood as a whole society issue. We need to consider the conditions of vulnerability and higher risk encountered by migrants. So well detailed by Francisco Espinosa, and also understand the importance to integrate them in our economies and now in our post-COVID recovery. This is a challenge, but also an opportunity. Let me please echo to Jean-Christophe's words and underscore that a good integration is an investment to the future. We would like to thank Turkey for sharing this very rich experience. Thank you, Ambassador Alkin, for being here and share this important experience with us. It is our hope that this dialogue continues to be a priority in our migration agendas, and of course we welcome all support from ELS and Development Center, since we are sure that all insights and guidance will be of a great value to us. And Mario, I think that you are agree with this issue regarding the cooperation. I think that for sure the next discussion could be deeper in the importance issue about the donors as a result of what migrants imply. The international cooperation is really important for the host countries. I think that we have to go deeper in this important topic. So, dear participants, please receive the warmest greetings on behalf of the Colombian delegation. We would like to extend our invitation to continue engaging in discussions on this issue and adopting concrete actions to protect migrants around the world. So, thank you very much for being here today. Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Good evening.